Pull up that chair and get comfortable. I've got a story to tell you about how much things have changed since 1995. And it's quite something to see when you put the numbers side by side. Tonight, we're taking a journey through what life cost back then compared to what we're paying today in 2025. These aren't just statistics, they're pieces of a bigger puzzle that shows how differently families live now than they did 30 years ago. It's fascinating how much has shifted, and I think you'll find the comparisons pretty eye-opening. Ready to explore? Let's take a look. A gallon of gas cost you $1.25 in 1995, and that felt expensive. You complained to the clerk, shook your head at the pump, and drove home wondering if prices would ever come back down. Today, that same gallon runs you $3.50 on a good day, $4 when the world gets nervous, and somehow we've convinced ourselves that's normal. But here's what really hurts. Back then, that $1.25 represented about 4 minutes of work at minimum wage. Now, you're looking at 22 minutes of labor for the same gallon of gas. The average American home in 1995 sold for around $90,000. Not a mansion, not some luxury palace, just a regular 3-bedroom house with a driveway and maybe a small yard where kids could ride bikes. You saved up for a down payment, got a mortgage that didn't require a mathematics degree to understand, and moved in feeling like you'd made it. Today, that same house, probably with the original carpet and a kitchen that hasn't been updated since Clinton was president, will cost you $400,000 if you're lucky, $500,000 if you're not. But the real kicker? In 1995, the median household income was about $34,000, so that $90,000 house cost roughly 2.5 times what families earned in a year. Fast forward to today, and the median household income sits around $70,000, while that house costs 6 times annual earnings. The math doesn't lie, and it doesn't care about your feelings either. Here's a question for you. What did your parents pay for their first house? And what would that same house cost today in your area? You walked into the supermarket in 1995 with a $20 bill and walked out with enough food to feed a family for 3 days. Ground beef was $2 a pound. Milk cost about $2.50 a gallon. And bread, real bread, not the processed foam they try to pass off today, ran you maybe 90 cents a loaf. You filled your cart, reached the checkout, and the total rarely shocked you into silence. These days, that same $20 might get you a decent lunch for one person, maybe 2, if you're really stretching it. Ground beef hit $6 a pound and keeps climbing like it's got somewhere important to be. Milk pushes $4 a gallon, and don't even get started on eggs. Those little protein bombs now cost more per pound than some cuts of meat used to. I want you to try something. Next time you're at the grocery store, add up what a basic family meal costs. Then imagine buying the same ingredients in 1995. Share your results. I think you'll be surprised. College in 1995 meant something different entirely. State universities charged around $3,000 a year for tuition. You could work a summer job, maybe 25 hours a week during school, and graduate without owing your soul to the government. Students lived in dorms that smelled like instant ramen and broken dreams. But they weren't drowning in debt before their careers even started. A bachelor's degree was your ticket to the middle class, not a mortgage on your future. Today's college students face tuition bills that will make your 1995 self weep. State schools charge 15, 20, sometimes 30,000 a year, and private colleges, they're reaching for the stars at 60, 70, 80,000 annually. Students graduate with debt loads that rival home mortgages, except houses appreciate in value and degrees just get you an entry-level job that requires 5 years of experience you don't have. The job market in 1995 felt different too. Companies hired people, trained them, and expected to keep them around for a while. Health insurance came standard with most full-time jobs. Retirement plans actually existed, and nobody talked about the gig economy because steady employment was still the goal, not some quaint relic of the past. You showed up, did your work, and went home to a life that didn't revolve around side hustles and second jobs. Rent in 1995 followed something called the 30% rule. You shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on housing. And for most people, that actually worked. A decent apartment cost $400, $500, maybe $600 a month, and minimum wage workers could still afford their own place, even if it wasn't fancy. Roommates were for college students and people saving up for something better, not a necessity for anyone under 40 trying to survive in major cities. Walk into any city today and try to find an apartment that costs 30% of median income. Go ahead, I'll wait. You'll find studio apartments the size of walk-in closets renting for $2,500 a month. One bedrooms pushing $3,000, and landlords asking for credit scores that would make loan officers jealous. The 30% rule died somewhere around 2010, and nobody bothered with a funeral. Healthcare costs in 1995 were expensive, sure, but they didn't bankrupt families just for showing up. Insurance deductibles measured in hundreds of dollars, not thousands. Prescription medications cost what they were supposed to cost, not what the market would bear, plus a prayer and your firstborn child. You could visit a doctor without calculating whether the visit would be worth 2 weeks of groceries. But here's where it gets really interesting. Wages. The federal minimum wage in 1995 was $4.25 an hour. Sounds pathetic by today's standards until you realize what that money could buy. $4.25 in 1995 dollars equals about $8 today when you adjust for inflation. The current federal minimum wage, $7.25, and it's been stuck there since 2009 like a broken clock that nobody wants to fix. So minimum wage workers today earn less purchasing power than their counterparts did 30 years ago, while everything they need to buy costs exponentially more. It's not just about the numbers. It's about what those numbers represent. Dignity, independence, the basic ability to work full-time and afford a life that doesn't require choosing between rent and groceries. The American dream in 1995 wasn't about becoming rich or famous. It was about working hard, playing by the rules, and building something stable for your family. You could graduate high school, get a job at the local factory or office, work your way up over 20 years, and retire with a pension that would keep you fed and housed until the end. That path didn't just exist. It was common, expected, normal. Today, that same path looks like a fairy tale told by grandparents who lived in simpler times. Factories moved overseas, pensions disappeared like morning fog, and companies discovered they could hire 3 part-time workers instead of 1 full-time employee and save money on benefits. The rules changed, but nobody updated the playbook for regular folks just trying to get by. Think about this. What was your first job, and what did it pay? Could someone live on those wages today doing the same work? Car payments in 1995 averaged around $250 a month for something reliable and decent. You could buy a used Honda or Toyota with 100,000 miles and expect another 100,000 miles of faithful service. Cars lasted because they were built to last, and mechanics could actually fix them without a computer science degree. Modern car payments average over $600 a month for vehicles loaded with technology that breaks the moment the warranty expires. Everything's computerized, specialized, and designed to send you back to the dealership every time something goes wrong. That reliable used car with reasonable miles? Good luck finding one that won't cost you a mortgage payment. Credit cards in 1995 were tools for emergencies and convenience, not lifelines for basic survival. Interest rates were regulated, fees were reasonable, and most people paid them off monthly without thinking twice. Credit was something you used, not something that used you. Fast forward to today, and credit cards have become the bridge between paychecks for millions of families. Interest rates that would make loan sharks blush. Fees for everything from late payments to breathing too loudly. And minimum payments designed to keep you trapped in debt until your great-grandchildren graduate college. Entertainment used to be something you could afford without planning a budget meeting. Movie tickets cost $4, popcorn was reasonable, and taking your family to the cinema didn't require a second mortgage. You went to Blockbuster on Friday nights, rented 2 movies for the weekend, grabbed some candy from the grocery store, and called it a perfect evening. Total cost? Maybe $15 including gas to drive there. Today's entertainment industry has turned into a subscription nightmare that would make your 1995 self dizzy. Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Apple TV, Spotify, YouTube Premium. The list keeps growing like weeds after rain. Each service costs $10 to $20 monthly. And somehow you need all of them because every company decided to hoard their content like dragons guarding treasure. What used to cost you $15 for a weekend now runs $60 to $80 every month just to watch shows interrupted by ads you're paying to avoid. Cell phones in 1995 were luxury items carried by doctors, drug dealers, and people who thought they were more important than they actually were. Most folks had landlines that cost $25 a month for unlimited local calls and long distance that you planned like military operations. You talked to people when you got home, made plans that you actually kept, and somehow the world kept spinning without constant connectivity. These days, Your phone bill rivals your grocery budget. Basic service starts at $60 monthly for one line. Family plans push $200. And that's before you add insurance, extended warranties, and premium data packages. The phone itself costs more than most people's monthly rent in 1995, and you're expected to replace it every 2 years like it's made of tissue paper and wishful thinking. Insurance used to protect you from disasters, not create them. Car insurance covered accidents, health insurance covered medical bills, and homeowner's insurance covered your house if it burned down. Deductibles were manageable, coverage was comprehensive, and claims got paid without hiring a team of lawyers to interpret policy language written in ancient Sumerian. Modern insurance feels like legalized extortion dressed up in corporate speak. Car insurance rates have tripled while covering less. Health insurance deductibles start where your 1995 salary ended, and homeowners' policies exclude everything except acts of God, witnessed by 3 ordained ministers and a notary public. You pay premiums that would choke a horse for coverage that disappears the moment you actually need it. Utilities in 1995 followed a simple principle. You used electricity, you paid for electricity. Water bills covered water, gas bills covered gas, and nobody tried to convince you that paying more for the same service was somehow innovative. Your monthly utility budget was predictable, reasonable, and allowed you to run your air conditioner without choosing between comfort and eating. Today's utility companies have discovered creative ways to multiply your pain while delivering the same basic services your grandparents took for granted. Delivery charges, connection fees, maintenance surcharges, green energy premiums, smart meter upgrades, and seasonal adjustment rates that adjust everything except your ability to pay them. They've turned keeping the lights on into advanced mathematics that would challenge NASA engineers. Banking in 1995 meant walking into a building where human beings helped you deposit checks, withdraw money, and explain account fees that you could count on one hand. Overdraft charges were rare, ATM fees were minimal, and banks actually wanted your business instead of treating you like an inconvenience they tolerated for regulatory reasons. Modern banking has transformed into fee-harvesting operations disguised as financial institutions. Monthly maintenance charges, minimum balance penalties, overdraft fees that compound faster than nuclear reactions, and ATM charges for accessing your own money from machines owned by banks that don't want to see you in person. They've figured out how to charge you for everything except breathing, and they're probably working on that too. Child care in 1995 was expensive but manageable for working families. Daycare centers charged reasonable rates. Babysitters earned pocket money instead of professional salaries, and extended family lived close enough to help without requiring airline tickets and hotel reservations. Parents could work without spending their entire paycheck on someone else watching their kids. Today's child care costs rival college tuition and sometimes exceed it. Quality daycare runs $1,500 to $2,000 monthly per child, and that's if you can find an opening. Babysitters charge $20 an hour for services that used to cost $5, and many families discover it's cheaper for one parent to stay home than pay someone else to raise their children. Clothing used to last until you outgrew it or wore it completely out. You bought shirts that survived years of washing, jeans that got better with age, and shoes that could be resoled instead of replaced. Department stores had sales that actually saved you money, and back-to-school shopping didn't require financing options. Fast fashion has created a world where clothes fall apart after 3 washings, shoes disintegrate if you look at them wrong, and everything's designed to be thrown away and replaced constantly. You pay more for garbage that won't last a season while convincing yourself that constant shopping is somehow economical. The psychological weight of these changes affects people in ways that don't show up in government statistics or economic reports. In 1995, financial stress meant worrying about saving enough for vacation or whether you could afford the good cable package. Today, financial stress means choosing between prescription medications and rent, between fixing your car and feeding your family, between heating your house and paying the electric bill. Young adults in 1995 moved out of their parents' houses because they could afford to live independently. They got apartments, bought furniture, and started building adult lives without requiring co-signers, guarantors, and credit scores that determine their worth as human beings. Independence wasn't a luxury. It was an expectation. Today's young adults live with their parents not by choice but by necessity. They work multiple jobs that don't pay enough for basic survival, accumulate debt for education that doesn't guarantee employment, and watch their dreams of home ownership drift further away like smoke in the wind. The American promise of each generation doing better than the last has become a cruel joke told by people who got theirs before the ladder got pulled up. Here's the big question. If you're under 40, are you better off than your parents were at your age? Really think about it before you answer. This isn't about nostalgia for simpler times or romanticizing the past. Every era has its challenges, its inequalities, its problems that needed solving. But something fundamental has shifted in how our economy distributes the benefits of prosperity, and pretending everything's fine won't make the math work for families drowning in costs that have grown faster than weeds after a thunderstorm. The real tragedy isn't just the numbers, it's what they represent. In 1995, a high school graduate could walk into a factory, office, or retail store and negotiate a starting wage that meant something. Employers competed for workers by offering better pay, better benefits, better opportunities for advancement. You had leverage because companies needed you as much as you needed them. Today's job market has flipped that equation completely. Employers post positions requiring bachelor's degrees for jobs that used to need a strong back and common sense. They demand 5 years of experience for entry-level positions, offer wages that haven't budged since the Bush administration, and act like they're doing you a favor by considering your application. Meanwhile, they complain about worker shortages while refusing to pay workers enough to survive. Retirement in 1995 meant something concrete. You worked for 30 years, contributed to a pension fund, and trusted that your employer would keep their promises. Social Security was the foundation, not the entire structure. Company pensions provided the walls, and personal savings formed the roof. Three-legged stools were stable, predictable, and allowed people to stop working before they died at their desks. The modern retirement system resembles a house of cards built during an earthquake. Pensions disappeared faster than free lunch programs, replaced by 401k plans that shift all the risk onto workers who never asked to become day traders. Social Security benefits buy less each year, while politicians argue about whether the program will exist when you need it. Personal savings? Good luck saving anything when rent costs 60% of your income and groceries eat the rest. Small businesses in 1995 could actually compete with large corporations. Local hardware stores thrived alongside Home Depot. Independent bookshops coexisted with chain stores, and family restaurants served communities without getting crushed by franchise operations. Starting a business required hard work, good service, and reasonable startup costs that regular people could manage. Today's small business landscape looks like a wasteland littered with the dreams of entrepreneurs who couldn't afford to compete with companies that lose money for years just to eliminate competition. Amazon sells products below cost until local stores close, then raises prices once they've cornered the market. Walmart moves into small towns, destroys local businesses with predatory pricing, then leaves communities with fewer options and lower wages than they had before. The housing market has created a two-class system that would make feudal lords proud. In 1995, renters were mostly young people saving for houses, college students, or folks between homes during life transitions. Home ownership was the default setting for middle-class families because mortgages cost less than rent and build equity instead of enriching landlords. Current housing costs have created a permanent renter class trapped by prices that rise faster than incomes. Investment companies buy entire neighborhoods, convert single-family homes into rental properties, and charge whatever the market will bear. Young families compete with hedge funds for houses, and guess who wins when cash offers trump mortgage applications every single time? The numbers don't lie, and they paint a picture that's impossible to ignore. What we called expensive in 1995 looks like a clearance sale compared to today's cost of living crisis. Housing, food, education, healthcare, everything has outpaced wages so dramatically that the middle class is getting squeezed out of existence. This isn't just about economics or policy debates. This is about real families making impossible choices between basic necessities because the math simply doesn't work anymore. Don't be a stranger now, you hear? Come back soon and I'll tell you more stories. Maybe about when a college education was an investment instead of a gamble, or when starting a small business didn't require selling your soul to venture capitalists. And if you've got questions about how we got from there to here, you just ask. Take care of yourself in this expensive world, and remember, understanding the problem is the first step toward fixing it. Sweet dreams, and don't let the cost of living keep you awake at night.